St. Gabriel Medical Center's emergency department does not sleep. It breathes, shallow, relentless, fluorescent. The monitors never stop. The gurneys roll in patterns that take years to learn and seconds to forget when something goes wrong. Every corridor smells like antiseptic and barely held together decisions. Tonight, the rhythm is intact. Tonight, it will not stay that way. In the far corner of Trauma Bay 3's waiting area. Yes, a man in a dark tailored suit sits with his hands folded over one knee. He is not watching his phone. He is watching the floor. Anyone who looked, really looked, would notice his eyes are not on the floor at all. He arrived 90 minutes ago. He has not moved. Something is about to change that. If you're ready for a story where power shifts, where silence turns into strategy, hit like right now. Because what happens next isn't just revenge, it's justice. And if you want more stories where powerful men are held accountable and the right people win in the end, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what the man in the dark tailored suit is about to do. Maya Rowe, 28, senior ER nurse, hair in a low, precise ponytail that doesn't shift when she runs. Navy scrubs pressed at the start of every shift rumpled into honesty by hour 3. Oh, she moves through the department the way current moves through water. Efficient, invisible until you need it, impossible to stop once it's going. Ask anyone on the floor who to call when a code is spiraling and the intern is crying. They'll say her name without hesitation. No one ever had to ask her twice. Tonight, she's charting at the station, focused, pen moving in the steady rhythm that means everything is, for now, under control. The control she carries has never come easily. And it was built, drilled into muscle memory by years of watching doctors panic and deciding she would not. Colleagues lean on it the way people lean on walls, without thinking about whether the wall is tired. Dr. Eric Halston, chief trauma surgeon, hospital golden boy, the name that brings in donors. He doesn't enter rooms, he occupies them. 6'2", jaw sharpened by 2 decades of being told he's exceptional. The scrubs that still look pressed at hour 10 because men like Halston have staff for that. He has the kind of confidence that reads as competence until you know the difference. His hands have saved lives, genuinely, undeniably. He mentions this, implicitly, in the way he takes up space. Nobody corrects him, nobody ever has. Tonight there are hospital trustees visiting. A quarterly walkthrough dressed as goodwill. Halston has been performing excellence for 3 hours and the Ming is getting heavy. He storms out of Trauma Bay 3 with his jaw locked in a fury looking for somewhere to land. He's already on the wrong edge of irritation before he reaches the nursing station. A patient transfer delayed, a lab result that should have been flagged an hour ago. The trustees smiling somewhere behind him, which means every mistake tonight has an audience. Oh, where's the updated chart on bed 7? Maya doesn't look up immediately. Not from disrespect, from competence. She finishes the entry she's typing so the data is clean before the handoff. Labs just came through. I'm entering them now. 30 seconds. It was the right answer, the only responsible answer. It was the wrong answer to give Eric Halston in front of hospital trustees at 11:46 on a Thursday night when his patients had already been ground to nothing. His hand shot forward. It not for the chart, for her hair, a fistful, low at the ponytail, hard. The sound of strands pulling taut under sudden force cut through the department sharper than any code alarm. Maya's head jerked back. Pain shot from her scalp straight down her spine, white and immediate. Around her, a pen hitting the floor, an intern's sharp inhale, a patient's family member rising halfway out of a waiting chair. 2 nurses frozen mid-step like the whole department had been paused on a single frame. Halston leaned close, his voice barely above a murmur, which was somehow worse than shouting. "You don't make me wait!" He released her with a shove and took the chart from her hand. Maya didn't scream. She didn't flinch, she didn't break, she went still. The kind of still that isn't shock. The kind that is a choice made in under a second by a woman who has learned that reaction is what gets used against you. The pain burned behind her eyes, her scalp throbbed. Now something hot and furious moved through her chest and she pressed it down, the way she always pressed it down, into the place where it would wait until she was somewhere safe enough to feel it. She straightened her shoulders, looked at him directly. "Your patient's potassium is dropping. You'll want to see page 3. Professionalism under humiliation. The audacity of competence when every instinct should have been something else. and it echoed off the walls of the trauma bay louder than anything she could have screamed. Jae-min Kang. Most of St. Gabriel's staff does not know his name. The city does. He is not a patient. He is not family. He is there because one of his senior logistics managers, a man named Park, was brought in 4 hours ago after a warehouse incident on the south waterfront, a courtesy visit. Jae-min rarely makes these himself. He had intended to stay 20 minutes. He had stayed. Yet from behind the trauma bay glass, seated in the dark like he belongs to it, he has watched everything. The trustees, the escalating tension, the chart request, the approach he clocked 3 seconds before Halston's arm moved, the particular trajectory of a man who has never once been told no and has therefore forgotten that other people have spines. He runs a logistics empire that quietly owns significant portions of the city's waterfront infrastructure. He has interests in 11 countries. Out in certain rooms, his name ends conversations. Tonight, he is a man in a chair, watching through glass, going very still in a way that has nothing to do with patience. When Halston's hand closed in Maya's hair, one thing happened in Jae-min Kang. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. The fingers of his right hand curled once, slowly, against the armrest, and then released. That was all. No movement toward the door, no reaching for a phone, no sharp exhale or shift in posture. Out to the waiting room, he was simply a well-dressed man, being still. But his eyes did not leave Halston, and somewhere behind them, a machine that had run a significant portion of this city's unofficial infrastructure for over a decade turned over the information it had just received and began, quietly, precisely, without emotion, deciding what to do with it. He watched her straighten. He watched her hand the chart over without shaking. And he watched her redirect his attention to the patient, as though the last 10 seconds had been a minor administrative inconvenience rather than a public humiliation designed to remind her of her size. The trustees were already looking away. The frozen staff was already moving again. The system was already in the process of forgetting. He didn't know her name yet, but he memorized her face. Not because she was remarkable in the way the world generally means that word. Because she had gone still when she should have broken, and stillness, in Jae-min's experience, was the rarest and most dangerous quality a person could have. His lieutenant's room was ready. He could leave. He stayed another 40 minutes. She never looked through the glass long enough to see him. He noticed her not noticing. Something about that worked on him in a way he didn't examine. It is past midnight when the shift supervisor approaches Maya at the station. As her expression is practiced, the careful face of bad news wrapped in professional distance. "There's a matter I need to flag before you finish your shift." Maya sets down her pen slowly, looks up. Dr. Halston has filed an incident report. He's claiming insubordination, failure to provide patient documentation in a timely manner, conduct disruptive to patient care. The supervisor doesn't meet her eyes. He's requesting a formal review. Maya's hands are very flat on the desk, very still. He pulled my hair. A pause. The supervisor's mouth tightens slightly. He says you misunderstood a physical gesture meant to get your attention. Misunderstood. Across the department, through the glass of the trauma bay, the chair where the man in the dark suit had been sitting is now empty. But just outside the elevator bay, Jae-min Kang is holding his phone to his ear. His voice when he speaks is level, unhurried, the voice of a man who has already decided. The security system at St. Gabriel Medical, tonight's footage from the ER floor. Pull it, back it up somewhere they can't reach. A pause. Yes, now. He ends the call and steps into the elevator. The doors close. Maya doesn't know his name yet. She will. But to understand why Maya Rowe went still, and why that specific stillness stopped a man like Jae-min Kang in his tracks, you have to understand where both of them came from. What it costs a person to build that kind of composure, and what it costs a person to forget. For the first time in years that they were supposed to leave. This is where the story actually starts. The HR office at St. Gabriel smelled like recycled air and careful language. Dr. Patricia Morse sat across from Maya with a manila folder, a rehearsed expression, and the particular posture of someone who has delivered bad news so many times it no longer registers as bad, just procedural. Given the nature of Dr. Halston's report, she began, and in the interest of preserving a stable care environment, he grabbed my hair. Maya's voice was even. In front of the nursing station, in front of patients' families. Morse's pen paused over the form. We understand this feels distressing. Feels. The word landed like a small, precise insult. The security footage has been reviewed, Morse continued. Unfortunately, there are questions about the camera angle. The relevant frames lack sufficient clarity to establish a definitive account. Insufficient camera angle clarity, 5 words, bureaucratic, bloodless, designed to sound like a technical problem rather than a decision someone had made in a room Maya wasn't invited to. I'd like a copy of that review, Maya said, in writing, today. Another pause. Morse's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind it, the faint recalibration of a person who had expected less resistance. Of course. Yet in the meantime, pending the formal investigation, you're being placed on administrative leave, effective end of shift. Maya looked at her for a long moment. Then she picked up her bag and walked out before they could watch her process it. She made it to the parking garage. 3rd level, the far corner where the lights flickered and no one parked after 9 p.m. She sat in the driver's seat with both hands around her keys and let the shaking come. Not tears. Not yet. It's just the body's honest response to sustained, controlled rage, the kind that lives below the throat and above the stomach and has nowhere to go when you've spent an entire meeting keeping your face professional. She had worked 6 years to be irreplaceable in that department. 6 years of covering shifts, shanning codes, staying late, being the one who held things together quietly so that men like Halston could arrive and take credit for a department that ran on nurses nobody thanked. And in under 12 hours, a man with hospital donors on speed dial had turned that into a file marked insubordination. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. On the 4th call, something, exhaustion maybe, or the irrational need for any voice that wasn't the one still echoing in her head, made her answer. Ms. Rowe. Male, low, accented in a way she couldn't immediately place, Korean, but calibrated by years in international rooms. The footage they reviewed this morning is not the original. Someone edited 12 seconds before it reached HR. I have the unaltered copy, backed up, off-site. They cannot reach it. Silence. Who is this? Someone who was in the waiting room last night. She went still, the same way she'd gone still in the ER. Not from fear, from recognition. What do you want? A pause, thoughtful, like he was deciding on the most honest answer. Nothing from you, but what happened was wrong. Yeah, and the people trying to bury it are making a mistake I find difficult to ignore. He ended the call. Maya sat in the flickering dark of the parking garage, heart loud in her chest, and typed 2 words into her search bar. Jae-min Kang. The results loaded. She stopped breathing. He wasn't just a man in a waiting room. He wasn't just a man in a waiting room. Jae-min Kang did not make decisions emotionally. This was not a character flaw he had worked to correct. Yet it was architecture, something built deliberately over many years, reinforced by the specific education of watching emotional men make expensive mistakes. He had learned early that the most dangerous thing a person in his position could do was react. Reaction was noise. Noise was exposure, and exposure, in his world, was the beginning of every ending. So when people asked, in the careful, indirect way people asked things of Jae-min, what had made him intervene at St. In a Gabriel Medical Center that Thursday night, he gave them the true answer. It was disorderly. They usually expected something else. They didn't get it. His empire, such as it was, ran on order. Kang Logistics moved freight through 14 ports across 3 continents. Kang Real Estate held quietly significant stakes in half the city's waterfront development corridor. His name appeared on philanthropic boards, hospital donor lists, and university endowment committees. The kind of visible legitimacy that functions, in certain rooms, as both introduction and warning. In other rooms, the ones without windows and with better security, his name meant something different, not cruder, just more accurate. He did not threaten people. Threatening required emotion. What Jae-min did was calculate, identify the precise point at which a system's self-interest and his own aligned, then apply the appropriate pressure until the system corrected itself, quietly, efficiently, without drama. What Eric Halston had done in that ER was not quiet. It was not efficient. It was a man so insulated by institutional protection that he had forgotten, somewhere along the way, that witnesses existed, that cameras existed, that the world continued to operate even when he was inconvenienced. Disorder, that was what it was. And disorder, in Jae-min's experience, though compounded if left unaddressed. Maya refused the settlement on a Tuesday. He found out within the hour. He had expected it, had, if he was being precise, counted on it. A woman who goes still under that kind of pressure and redirects the conversation to the patient does not sign documents designed to make her disappear. He sent the text anyway. Then we apply pressure properly. Not because she needed his permission, because she needed to know she wasn't applying it alone. The pressure did not roar. It never did. Kang Logistics' legal team submitted a formal request for a full audit of St. Gabriel's procurement contracts. Standard due diligence, they said, given the scale of Kang's philanthropic commitments to the hospital's East Wing expansion. Entirely routine. A separate inquiry, routed through a financial compliance firm with no visible connection to Jae-min, opened a review of Dr. Halston's research grant allocations over the previous 4 years. Grants had a way of revealing the shape of a man's priorities when examined carefully, and a board member, a woman who had sat across from Jae-min at 3 separate fundraising dinners and smiled warmly each time, received a quiet, factual reminder that Kang funding represented a non-trivial percentage of the hospital's capital development pipeline. No ultimatum, no raised voice, just information delivered to the right person in the right order. Pressure didn't announce itself. It arrived like weather, until the people inside could feel it in the walls. On Thursday morning, Maya's attorney called. 2 former St. Gabriel nurses had made contact. Both had worked under Halston. Both had left the hospital within the last 3 years. Neither had been asked to leave voluntarily. They had been waiting for someone to go first. They were waiting for someone to go first. Now that someone had, the people who preferred things buried were paying attention. It started with Marcus Webb, orderly, 6 years at St. Gabriel, one of 2 people closest to the nursing station the night of the incident. Close enough that his statement, properly filed, would be unignorable. He was 24, reliable, the kind of worker who showed up early and left late and had never once given anyone a reason to look at him twice. On a Wednesday morning, he received a job offer, private medical transport company, 40% salary increase, benefits. Now a start date of the following Monday. He had not applied. By Thursday, the offer had disappeared. The company, when Marcus called back, said the position had been filled internally. Apologized for the confusion, wished him well. He didn't understand what had happened. Maya did. She found out through her attorney, a detail passed along with the careful neutrality of someone delivering information they suspected would cause friction. It did. She called the number she had saved under no name. The orderly, she said, when he picked up. A pause. Not surprise, confirmation. It was handled. I know it was handled. That's the problem. She kept her voice steady, the way she always kept her voice steady. I need Marcus to testify because he chose to, not because someone cleared the road for him and he never knew the road existed. The offer would have worked, Jae-min said. Not defensive, factual. I know it would have. That's also the problem. Silence. Well, the kind that meant he was actually considering what she'd said rather than preparing a response. You want to speak to him yourself? Yes. Another pause. Then, all right. Just that. No argument, no explanation of why his way was more efficient, though it was. He simply moved. Maya wasn't sure what to do with a man who moved like that. She met him in person for the first time 4 days later. Kim Dunn's office, glass walls, afternoon light, a conference table that cost more than Maya's car. But he was already there when she arrived, standing at the window with his jacket buttoned and his hands at his sides, looking at the city the way people look at things they own a portion of. He turned when she entered, said her name once, as a greeting, the way someone says a word they've looked up and wanted to use correctly. She had prepared, on the walk over, to be unimpressed. She was not unimpressed. And he was composed in the way that had nothing to do with effort, the composure of a man who had long since stopped performing anything for anyone. His eyes, when they settled on her, were attentive in a way that felt almost clinical, like she was information he was still processing. She sat down. He sat across from her. Kim Dunn positioned herself between them like a referee who had done this before. They talked for 40 minutes about strategy, documentation, witness preparation. Yet he spoke only when he had something to add. He did not interrupt. When she pushed back on two of his recommendations, he listened, considered, and adjusted without requiring her to win an argument first. She found this, somehow, more unsettling than if he'd fought her. The court date was confirmed on Friday morning. By afternoon, Halston's legal team had filed a countersuit: defamation, reputational damage, loss of professional standing. Maya read the filing in her car. Then she called her attorney and said, very quietly, "Good." He'd just given them everything they needed. He'd just given them everything they needed. The courtroom at the Hargrove County Civil Court building smelled like old wood and deliberate calm. The kind of calm that institutions construct around themselves to remind everyone inside that emotion is a liability and procedure is the only language that counts here. Maya sat beside Kim Dunn in a charcoal blazer she had pressed 3 times the night before. Her hands were in her lap. Her face was the face she had been building for 6 years in emergency rooms, present, composed, giving nothing away for free. Across the aisle, Eric Halston sat with 2 attorneys in the particular posture of a man who had never seriously believed this would reach a courtroom. Even now, something in his bearing said inconvenience rather than consequence. And he had not looked at her once. She had not stopped being aware of exactly where he was. The hospital's counsel went first. They presented the edited footage in the 3rd hour of proceedings. 22 seconds of ER floor activity, the relevant frames pixelated at the edges, the timestamp jumping with the smoothness of a clean cut. An AV consultant they had hired explained, with a great deal of professional vocabulary, that the footage was consistent with the contact of the shoulder, a supervisory gesture not uncommon in high-pressure clinical environments. Then they came for Maya, an HR file, assembled with care. 3 incidents cited: a conflict with a charge nurse in 2021, a documentation delay in 2022, a formal complaint from a resident who had since left the hospital. Individually, each was small. Together, they were the shape of an argument. She is difficult. She escalates. This is a pattern. Maya listened without moving. Kim Dunn made notes. Marcus Webb testified at 2:15 p.m. He was not a polished witness. His voice shook on the 2nd question and steadied on the 4th. He said what he had seen. He said it plainly, in the specific, unglamorous language of someone describing a thing that actually happened, rather than a story they'd prepared. Under cross-examination, Halston's attorney pressed him on distance, on lighting, on his angle of sightline. He held. Not because he was unshakable, because what he had seen was simple, and he hadn't changed it. Kim Dunn stood at 3:40 p.m. Your Honor, the defense would like to introduce a second recording of the incident in question. A pause. The hospital's counsel exchanged a look that Maya cataloged and filed. This footage was secured from St. Gabriel's external server infrastructure on the night of the incident by a third party. Metadata is intact. A chain of custody documentation has been provided to opposing counsel. The screen at the front of the courtroom changed. 43 seconds. No gaps, no convenient pixelation, no shoulder contact. His hand, her hair, the yank, her head snapping back, the pen hitting the floor, the frozen room. His mouth close to her ear, the shove, her shoulders straightening. Then her voice. Your patient's potassium is dropping. You'll want to see page 3. And the particular quality of a woman choosing, in real time, to be larger than what had just been done to her. The courtroom did not move. Halston's face drained, not quickly, slowly, the way color leaves something that has been out in the cold too long. The judge looked at the screen for a moment after the footage ended. Then she looked at the hospital's counsel. We'll take a 15-minute recess. Outside, the reporters were already moving. By the time Maya reached the hallway, her name was already trending. She didn't check her phone. She already knew what the footage had just done. So did he. She didn't check her phone. She already knew what the footage had just done. So did he. She saw him through the window. The press conference had lasted 11 minutes. Kim Dunn at the podium, Maya beside her, 4 sentences delivered to a row of cameras with her hands at her sides and her face giving nothing away for free. By the time it ended, there were reporters calling her name like they'd always known it. She slipped left when everyone expected her to go right and walked half a block down before she exhaled. That's when she saw him. Through the glass of a coffee shop she had walked past 100 times without entering, sitting at a corner table with a cup in front of him and his jacket still buttoned, watching the street with the particular quality of attention she was beginning to recognize as his. He wasn't watching for her. He was just there. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment longer than she needed to. Then she crossed the street. The coffee shop was warm. He looked up when she pushed through the door, not surprised exactly, but present in a way that sharpened when he saw her. She sat down across from him without being invited. He didn't comment on that. "You weren't supposed to be here," she said. "I wasn't inside." His voice was level. "You asked me not to be." She had. Through Kim Dunn. Through a message she hadn't been sure would land, it had landed. She looked at him directly for the first time outside of a conference room, without a table of strategy between them. "Why did you actually help?" He considered the question the way he considered everything, not stalling, just being precise. "The footage would have been buried," he said. "What was done to you would have been reclassified as a misunderstanding, and the man who did it would have continued doing it. That is a disorderly outcome." "That's not a reason," Maya said. "That's a result." Something shifted in his expression. Almost imperceptible. Almost. "Men like Halston," he said slowly, "build their worlds on the assumption that no one will hold the line. I've spent my life being the proof that assumption is wrong." A pause. "You held it without anyone watching, without any certainty it would matter. It almost didn't matter. But it did." He looked at her steadily. "Maka, you stood still when you could have broken. I don't encounter that often." Maya held his gaze. She was aware, in the way she was always aware of things she was choosing to know carefully, that this was the edge of something. "I need you to understand something," she said. "All right. I'm grateful. For the footage, for the lawyer, for the—" She paused, searching for the right word. "Architecture of what you built around this. But I'm not a project. And I'm not a debt." "I know. I mean it. So do I." No hesitation, no performance. Just the flat, factual weight of a man who was not used to being doubted and did not, apparently, resent it from her. The silence between them was the kind that had texture. He did not reach for her. He did not fill the space with anything easier than what it actually was. "The ruling," she said finally. 48 hours, he confirmed. She nodded, stood. He stood too, not to stop her. Just the instinct of a man with old manners underneath everything else. "Thank you," she said, "for staying on this side of the glass." She walked out. He watched her cross the street. He stayed until his coffee was cold and did not open his phone once. 48 hours. Then the ruling came. Judge Adaeze Okonkwo did not deliver it dramatically. She delivered it the way people deliver things they have thought about carefully, with precision and without theater, yet in language that did not require interpretation. Dr. Eric Halston, suspended from surgical privileges pending a full review by the State Medical Board. The countersuit dismissed with prejudice. St. Gabriel Medical Center, formally cited for evidence tampering. The edited footage and its chain of deletion documented, named, and entered into the public record. 2 members of the hospital's administrative team placed on investigative leave. Maya Rowe, reinstated. Full back pay. Our disciplinary record expunged. The hospital's counsel requested a statement of terms for a negotiated public apology. Kim Dunn submitted the language herself. Specific, unambiguous, stripped of the softening phrases that institutions reach for when they want to look accountable without actually being it. No, we regret any distress caused. No, in the interest of moving forward. Just the plain shape of what had happened and who had allowed it. They signed it by Friday afternoon. 2 board members announced their resignations the following week. The press release cited personal reasons. It always did. Maya read the ruling in Kim Dunn's office with her hands flat on the table and her face doing the thing it had been doing for 6 years, holding. Kim Dunn poured 2 glasses of water and set one in front of her and said nothing for a moment, which was exactly right. "What do you want to do next?" Kim asked eventually. But Maya had been thinking about that since the parking garage. "I want to build something," she said, "so the next person has somewhere to go before it gets this far." The foundation was incorporated 3 weeks later. The St. Gabriel Advocacy Fund, for hospital workers facing institutional retaliation, legal consultation, documentation support, witness coordination, funded initially by the settlement amount, which Maya had accepted once the apology language was locked and the record was clear. The announcement was quiet. No press conference. A single post, plainly written, from an account with no profile photo. Within 48 hours, 11 nurses had sent messages. Within a week, 23, none of them from St. Gabriel. She didn't know until later about the anonymous donation, dollar for dollar, matching the entire settlement amount, wired from a holding company whose name meant nothing until you traced it 3 levels deep. She didn't ask him directly. She sent a text. You matched it. The response came after a long pause. The fund is well structured. She stared at that for a moment. Then she put her phone down and went back to work. Her first shift back was a Tuesday, early morning. The department looked the same. The monitors, the gurneys, the fluorescent rhythm that never stopped. A junior nurse she didn't know met her at the station and said, "We heard about you," in a voice that meant something good by it. Maya nodded, pulled on her gloves. Ma picked up the first chart. By hour 2, it felt like she'd never left. By hour 4, she noticed it, the attending physician who passed her in the corridor without greeting her. The charge nurse who had filed a neutral statement during the investigation, not against her, not for her, who now found reasons to be elsewhere when Maya was at the station. Halston was gone. His architecture remained. She had won the case. The department was going to make her earn the room. She had won the case. The department was going to make her earn the room. She was doing that, quietly, shift by shift, the same way she had built everything, without asking permission, without announcing it, just by showing up and being undeniable. What she didn't notice, for almost 2 weeks, was the car. Black sedan. Always a block east of her building when she left for early shifts. Gone by the time she returned. Different plates on different days, but the same make, the same distance. It had the same quality of a stillness that she was, by now, beginning to recognize as a signature. She didn't confront him about it. She sent a text. "The car is unnecessary." His response came in under a minute. "It's not for you. It's for my peace of mind." She read that 3 times. Then she put her phone in her pocket and went to work and didn't mention it again. She invited him to dinner on a Thursday. Not as a thank you. She was precise about that in the message, just as a choice she was making. It was a restaurant she liked, near the waterfront, the kind of place that was good without performing it. He was already there when she arrived. She had expected that. Over the meal, she asked him about the beginning of it. The empire, the logistics company, the quiet accumulation of leverage that had somehow, over 2 decades, become a significant portion of the city's infrastructure. He told her the honest version, spare and factual, the way he told everything. A shipping family in Busan. And a father who taught him that systems had seams, and that the most powerful position was never the visible one. Early contracts that operated in places where the law was more of a suggestion than a boundary. "You're telling me this on purpose," Maya said. "You would find it anyway." "I'm asking what you think of it." He considered that, set down his glass. "I think I've done necessary things in contexts where necessity and ethics rarely occupied the same room," he said. I don't perform regret about it, but I'm aware of the distinction." Maya looked at him steadily. "The distinction between what?" "Between what I've built and what I'd want you to trust." The table was quiet for a moment. "That's either the most honest thing anyone has said to me," she said, "or the most strategic." "It's both." No hesitation. "They're not mutually exclusive." She almost smiled, almost. He walked her to her door because she let him. They stood in the corridor outside her apartment in the particular silence of something that had been approaching for 8 weeks and had finally arrived. He raised his hand slowly, not to her shoulder, not to her arm, to the loose strands at the edge of her hairline, the ones that had escaped the ponytail by hour 12 of a long day. He stopped. His eyes met hers. "May I?" 1 breath, 2. "Yes," she said. His hand moved to her hair with a steadiness that had nothing in it of the last time. "Oh, careful." A question answered rather than a command issued. He tucked the strand back and let his hand rest for a moment at the side of her face. She did not go still. She stayed. 3 days later, Kim Dunn called. The medical board investigation into Halston had surfaced something the original case hadn't reached: financial records, irregular payments across 6 years, 3 other hospitals, a procurement network that went significantly higher than one chief surgeon. This isn't just Halston," Kim said. Maya stood at her kitchen window and looked at the city. "No," she said, "it never was." She called Jae-min. He picked up on the first ring. "I know," he said. How long? A pause. Long enough that we should talk in person. She called Jae-min. He picked up on the first ring. I know. How long? A pause. Long enough that we should talk in person. Halston made one final move, through a former colleague on the state medical board. Yeah, he initiated a character review of Maya's testimony. Procedural, quiet, the kind of bureaucratic pressure designed to exhaust rather than win. A suggestion that her account had been coached, that the foundation's rapid growth indicated coordinated PR, not organic credibility. That the woman at the center of all this was, perhaps, not as straightforward as she appeared. It lasted 11 days. Jae-min dismantled it in 7, not loudly. He identified the board member running interference. Rowe cross-referenced him with 3 procurement contracts that traced back to the same hospital network Kim Dunn was already investigating, and delivered that information to the state attorney general's office through a compliance channel that had no fingerprints on it anywhere. The character review was quietly closed. The board member requested early retirement. Halston, finally, ran out of architecture. Maya testified before the State Hospital Reform Committee on a Wednesday morning in February. She was not the only one. She was the first. By the time the session closed, 7 others had spoken. Nurses, orderlies, a resident, a pharmacist. The committee chair, a woman who had been trying to open this particular door for 4 years, adjourned with the expression of someone who had finally found the key. The foundation was cited in the committee's formal report as a model for institutional accountability infrastructure. By the following month, 14 hospital systems across 5 states had reached out about replication. Jae-min suggested Seoul, the way he suggested most things, precisely, without pressure, with the full information necessary to make a real decision. There's a conference, he said. Healthcare governance reform, international scope. Your foundation would benefit from the visibility. I have business there the same week. Maya looked at him across the table. You have business everywhere. Every week. Yes. Is this you asking me to travel with you? A pause, the particular pause of a man choosing accuracy over deflection. Yes. She considered it for exactly as long as it deserved. All right. The airport was ordinary, crowded and fluorescent and nothing like a movie. They were 20 minutes from the gate when he stopped walking and turned to her, not dramatically, just with the deliberate quality of a man who had decided something and was saying it before he lost the precision of it. I don't have language for what this is, he said. I'm not going to perform one. Good, she said. But I want to be clear. What I'm offering isn't protection. It isn't a transaction. I know. He paused, looked for the word the way he always looked for the accurate one. Parallel, 2 people operating with full agency in the same direction. She held his gaze. That's the right word, she said. He nodded once. She picked up her bag. They walked to the gate. He didn't take her hand. She reached for his. 3 weeks after Seoul, she was back in St. Gabriel's emergency department. Same monitors, same fluorescent rhythm, same gurneys rolling in the patterns that took years to learn. A new resident dropped a chart at the nursing station, flustered, apologizing before she'd finished the mistake. Maya picked it up, handed it back. Said something quiet that made the resident's shoulders drop from around her ears. From the corridor, passing through, not staying, Jae-min saw it through the window. He did not stop walking. He didn't need to. She was not a woman who needed watching over. She was a woman who had rebuilt the room on her own terms, and he had been precise enough to know the difference between witnessing that and claiming it. Power isn't who pulls, it's who refuses to bend, and sometimes, rarely. Mom, if you're fortunate, it's who stands beside the person who didn't. If you enjoyed this journey, from humiliation to power, from silence to choice, show some love by hitting that like button. And if you want more stories filled with tension, quiet strength, dangerous loyalty, and slow burn intensity, make sure you subscribe and join us. Because this was just one chapter. The next story, it might start even quieter and end even bigger. See you in the next one.